Welcome to Backyard Philosophy, a podcast where a couple friends grab some cold ones, sit around the fire, and talk about science, philosophy, and history. Crack one open, sit back, and get a good laugh as we discuss everything from automation to why the meaning of life is 42. Fashion has existed for as long as humanity has been around. It has shaped cultures, civilizations, and the entirety of the human race. Who would have thought fashion had such an important role? But before we get into that, Nick, how you doing? What are you drinking?
I'm doing great, enjoying being warm and dry, and drinking some Irish coffee because it's still the morning for me. What about you?
I am cursed. Currently, there is snow in Texas. I do not like this, but I got a cold blue moon with me, so can't complain. And I want to start off with the definition of fashion, just so everyone's on the same page. According to Webster, fashion is the prevailing style during a particular time, such as a dress or a garment. And boy, does fashion run deep into human civilizations. Fashion, the oldest piece of fashion ever found, was a piece of jewelry found about 170,000 years ago. That's 80,000 years before the arrival of what we call modern man. So, yeah, fashion's been really important to multiple humanoids and for a very long time. But, Nick, before we continue on, what do you have on the history of fashion?
I didn't go that far back. Most of what I have is like the modern history of fashion, how for the longest time fashion just came out of Europe, especially Americans pretty much just thought anything that the Europeans did was awesome and we would copy their fashions and all that stuff until kind of World War, well, kind of to the Industrial Revolution, and the American fashion started becoming a lot more independent from European fashion.
I would agree with that statement. I would also agree. I would also say that every culture across the entire world has their own sense of fashion, their own sense of, I guess, identification, which we'll get into later in the podcast. But which I thought was really interesting, which kind of brings up my old fashion to catch up with your close history of fashion, is humans have dyed their hair, changed their colors for fashion statements since recorded history. So I would easily assume that we were doing it before recorded history. And it wasn't until 1883 where we developed the first synthetic dye simply to dye a person's hair. It was revolutionary because we had the Industrial Revolution meeting fashion almost in the sense where it's mass production and chemicals. And currently, 60% of women in Europe said they have, or estimated 60% of women in Europe have said they've dyed their hair at least once, and 70% of women in America say the same thing. Changing our appearance, Nick, is part of our long history as humanity and our tradition.
Yeah, and didn't really come across this too much, which is how much fashion actually drove a lot of history. Just think about the Silk Road and getting silk cloths out of China, even to the fur trade in Alaska for the seals, which messed up that population and created like an economic boom of sorts of people trying to get up there and get all the fur that they could.
Yeah, it was surprising me when researching this how ingrained fashion is to all of history. I mean, if you just want to go to 20th century, the bikini. The bikini was a byproduct of World War II, with fabrics being harder to come by and people still wanting to look fashionable. They developed the bikini. So thank God for that because I'm a fan of the bikini. But that it was directly tied into one of the most significant wars in all of human history.
Yeah, that is crazy. And I like just all the little footnotes of fashion. I mean, I think the first real fashion history influence that we came across as Americans is Ben Franklin dressing up like the country idiot in France, trying to, yeah,
The
with the
raccoon
raccoon
hat.
hat, coonskin cap, appeasing to the noble French.
Yeah, playing the part. I guess in my mind when researching this, what I think as modern fashion, like fitting in, trying to show your class, your structure, to me, started with the Romans. Surprise, surprise. They tend to be the first of many things.
All roads lead back to Rome, Mike.
It's so true, though. Like Romans, the color purple was sought after because it's from a snail. And, well, it's snail guts and piss. It smells horrible, but it gives that royal purple color, which is really expensive to do. It was a sign of status, a sign of your nobleness. And it's the same with all the fashions of that time. You could identify someone by their sandals, their sheets, their carpets in their house. The ambiance of what clothes or textiles or fashion they were wearing was a symbolism of their status in society. And it's weird how that tribalism and showing off peacocking is so ingrained into us through nature because birds and other animals do that, that we mimic it synthetically.
Yeah, that is crazy. I didn't know how that was made, but we do that today. I mean, you can easily judge someone's wealth by what kind of clothes they're wearing for the most part.
Oh, yes. And I assume we'll get into that with the appearance of how it affects yourself and how other people view you. Having a suit on versus a person having a fitted suit makes a world of difference, apparently, which is really surprising on how much psychology plays into a part of fashion and how we treat other human beings on based on how they're dressed. I guess we do judge a book by their cover.
Definitely. Other crazy fashion things I wanted to bring up is how the harm people will do to themselves in the name of fashion, and I think we'll get into this later, but just like they didn't really know at the time, but the Radiant girls who put the radioactive lipstick on so that their lips would glow in the dark, that we now know is bad for you.
Yeah, that's yeah, putting radiation on your skin really bad for you. Or how about when making specialized hats? I believe they were beaver top hats. You would use like mercury to create these hats. That's why you get the Hatcher, who is a crazy person in Alice in Wonderland. It's because a hat maker at the time would use poisonous chemicals to make it, and people who would wear them a long time would get poisoned and go crazy themselves. Sacrificing for art isn't just for sculptors and painters, but also fashion designers and fashion wearers.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I feel like there's some other something else out there.
Well, this might be a little bit from fashion, but it's to me in my mind still connects to fashion, where they would have uh, Chinese women have their feet broken and crushed to fit into petite shoes to fit a certain stereotype. I would classify as fashion, and that's physical harm and alteration to your body to look a certain way. And obviously, we progress to that with tattoos, with piercings, with dyeing of hair, alterations to look, feel a certain way solely based on cosmetic.
Yeah, and the idea that I was trying to think of is I'm not going to try and pronounce the tribal name, but an Alaskan tribe, many of them, they'd put the whalebone with carvings through their lips, and then they have to pack the hole in the lip with grass and stuff so that it continues to expand their lip so that they can put the whalebone inside. It's supposed to be pretty painful, but it's all in the name of fashion.
I know with certain African tribes where they put selected rings around their neck to help extend their necks to be more giraffe like. I believe that's an extremely painful process, and that's solely on the fashion of how many gold rings, how many structures you can, how many inches you can stretch your neck out, which I imagine can't be good for you, but it's so ingrained into their culture and history that that piece of fashion is probably never going to die.
Yeah. So a lot of that is kind of what you say, like fashion, societal like a symbol of you have. Oh man, what's the word I'm looking for? I am not hitting it today. kind of going back to like the Romans with their purple clothes is a symbol of nobility almost status.
Status.
There you go. Which is, I don't know. It seems like that's a lot of what fashion is. At least the morality of fashion is a sense of status, but also fitting in with the group. And I don't know. There's a part of fashion, obviously, that's to protect you from to protect you from the elements. But if we were only concerned with fashion for protection from the elements, we would all be wearing, cooling clothes if it's warm out, or like a t-shirt and shorts or whatever, or and then rain gear when it's raining, and that's about it. It wouldn't be the many different varieties of fashion that we have today, which is very different from the past,
In my
where you had kind of like the poor fashion and the nobility fashion.
Well, in my mind, fashion has nothing to do with functionality. It's simply a piece of art to do self-expression and a piece to show off that you're a certain class structure. I imagine for poor people back in the day before we had more cheap economy clothing was that was what they had. They weren't really cared about fashioning. They were cared about staying alive. And whatever clothes is warmer, I'm taking that one.
That's true.
But it's amazing to me on how much money, how much we spend and waste in the fashion world. Currently, as February 2019, the fashion industry is a $2.5 trillion industry annually. $2.5 trillion. Holy crap.
Yep. I'm not surprised. I mean, there's so many clothes that are overpriced and some underpriced, but a lot of people are continually buying clothes. I mean, I every time we go to Costco, I'll get like a new pair of jeans just because I ruined my last ones. And this is really funny, but my wife is always making fun of me because as the outside working male, I should probably not spend that much money on clothes, right? But I spend probably more money on her than her on clothes, mostly because I buy expensive. Like I bought some $200 rain pants, and then I have an expensive raincoat and like $400 work boots, compared to her like $30 work pants and $20 top. It's like, oh shoot, I'm the guy contributing to those numbers, and she is not.
Yeah, I mean, the current average American spends about $1,700 on clothes a year. And I find it funny, Nick, that you're in Idaho and you're spending more than her because this is a really interesting fact when I came researching this, which I completely caught me off guard. Hawaii, California, and Florida and New York are among the lowest spenders on clothes, averaging around $900, while Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and South Dakota average the highest, around $2,500 per person.
That doesn't surprise me that much because have you ever bought? I mean, I know you live in Texas now, but snow pants and jackets are pretty expensive. If you live in an area where you just buy warm weather clothes, it's gonna save a lot of money. Now, New York, I don't get, but I don't know. The colder it is, the more clothes you got to buy.
That sort of makes sense to me, but I also was wondering because those are major states that tend to be expensive states, like New York and California. I imagine you'd spend more money on your clothes. And I agree with you, Nick. That's what I came up with too. It was, hey, you need, to me, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and South Dakota are pretty much blue collar states, and working clothes are not expensive. I mean, are expensive because you need them to work. You need them to keep you going, which you kind of don't cheap out on. I mean, hell, I just bought two pairs of boots, and I was crying at the end of it because I spent so much money on just a good pair of working boots. So I can see it happening, but it was just so surprising to me that California and New York, the lowest spenders, even though they have such high priced everything.
Yeah, that is surprising. I do I do wonder if they just can't afford to buy clothes after paying rent there, but that could be a separate thing.
That is a fair assumption. Speaking of getting paid, I just want to throw this out there because I thought this was really interesting because we might be in the wrong career fields here, Nick. The average starting salary for fashion designers is 36,000 to 50,000. The average salary is nearly 90,000 for the United States. Fashion designers make bank apparently, which is quite interesting. But we've kind of talked about history of like how it's also poisoning us, but also sign of symbolism and clothes. So it's easy to say that fashion is a dual-edged sword. On one hand, you have art, expression, functionality, and capitalism. On the other hand, you have negative impact on the environment, mental health issues, waste, and sweatshop. And Nick, I'm wondering where you want to go from here.
Let's talk about the clothes that we wear, how they affect us personally, not other people viewing us.
Okay. I'll be honest. I'll be very forward with that. I like wearing clothes that I guess make me feel like a star in a movie, like the main hero. So when I wear jeans and a t-shirt, my t-shirt tends not to have any prints on them, any fonts on them, just a generic t-shirt so I could be in my own mind a hero of a movie. I like functionality, but I also like looking good. I like sometimes I wear dress shirts to work. Sometimes I don't have to. It's sometimes suit and tie. Sometimes just jeans and a button up. But for me personally, it's nice to feel to look. If you look good, you feel good. In my opinion.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm a forester. I work outside. I live in Pacific Northwest, so I dress pretty similar to every other person in the Pacific Northwest. Jeans, some kind of work boot ish, flannel or button up, and a hat. But I like to wear, like if I'm wearing a t-shirt or something, I like to wear a t-shirt of a brand that I like that maybe not everyone else gets or has like some kind of joke that like if someone comments on it, it's like, okay, I know we're cool. Let's see what's like there's a company Bison Union. They make a shirt that's Josie Wales for President 2020, and a lot of older people comment on that like, oh man, like I love Clint Eastwood. It's like, yeah, who doesn't? But and so it's kind of like, if you're in, you're in. I like kind of stuff like that, or it's got some it's kind of humorous that people get a laugh at or something. But and that makes that's kind of what I like to wear, and that makes me feel good. But I wanted to talk about something I came across about how like what you wear and how that affects you. For example, like lab coats for scientists. If you have people like two scientists, all they did is study for a couple different people, and you put the lab coat on and then you do a task, you're more attentive and more efficient wearing a lab coat than not wearing a lab coat, just because we become whatever it is that lab coat signifies, like intelligence or whatever. People feel more a sense of pride in their work or something that makes them more attuned to the task at hand while wearing that lab coat.
I saw the same thing, and I imagine uniforms, the whole psychology for uniforms has got to be in depth. I do want to point out, for at least me researching, it was kind of hard finding psychology on fashion. It seems to be a very untouched demographic for study. I want to add on to the lab coat because I thought this was really interesting. Simply buying gym clothes makes you more likely to work out. And wearing gym clothes, even though you don't go to the gym, makes you much more likely to go to the gym in the future. So buying new clothes specifically for the gym will most likely lead you to actually going to the gym and getting in shape.
It's a first step on a much larger journey.
Oh, we got to put the beer down first, Nick.
Ooh, no. Yeah, so you know how I know we read the same thing. I came across that same thing. And then, like you talked about uniforms, forget exactly the percentage, but students who wore uniforms to school did, I think it was like 15% or something better on their standardized tests than non-uniformed wearing schools.
Yeah, it seems like uniforms isn't a bad thing in the professional world. Granted, I kind of disagree with uniforms. I think kind of freedom of expression because I'm an American, but uniforms seem to be quite beneficial all around for performance and excellency and higher quality workers.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like you said, it makes a lot of sense. Uniforms make a lot of sense, but as an American, it's like, I don't want to wear a uniform. But at the same time, everyone wears a uniform. I was talking to This guy, really interesting guy, is a helicopter pilot who works for us sometimes, and he's had a pretty crazy life. Like he grew up running medical supplies down in South America with his dad, building schools, and then was a private pilot for this guy with a big tuna fleet in like the Philippines area. And he's been all over, done a lot of different things. And we were talking about like clothes and stuff and what you like to wear, kind of. So yeah, everyone's got a uniform. There's people out here in the woods who are like, oh man, I never want to wear a suit and tie. And then we all dress up in the same exact thing to go out to work. It's like we all have a uniform, whether we see it that way or not. We're all wearing the same, jeans, work shirt, boots, compared to nice shoes and a suit and tie. It's, in a sense, it is a uniform. It's kind of like you were talking about in the last episode, like a societal pressured uniform.
Oh, I completely agree with that statement. You want to blend in, you want to fit in. I imagine on both on a personal level and an outside level, uniforms for the U.S. military. It's something you take pride in, you take care of, something that identifies you, but you don't want something bad to happen. Much like you don't want something bad to happen to your country's flag, you protect it. Same with your uniform, especially if it's for colors. It's yours. You want to protect it. It's a symbolism of you, and it extends to that. And it's the same with every field, not just students, doctors, scientists, soldiers. Every field. When you have a uniform, whether it's consciously, subconsciously put on by your bosses or yourself, it's one way or another a uniform. Like you mentioned earlier, Nick, you wear boots, jeans, a shirt, usually plaid, and a hat, which is kind of the uniform for your industry.
Yeah, I was in the office on Friday doing paperwork, and everyone was in the office too. We kind of had an off day. It's not normally like that. And we all knew we all had an office day, and everyone in my office, all four foresters, wore nice jeans, some kind of nice flannel, and maybe a hat or maybe not. It's like, oh, we are in fact the same people.
And that kind of, to me, leads us to how society views us, how society changes our sense of fashion, our wanting to belong, our tribalism, our blending in.
Before we get there, I do want to discuss one more thing about like personal fashion. It is crazy how we look at uniforms and everything's kind of the same, especially for like the military, but everything, we always try and personalize it. Like there's got to be some semblance of us in it. Like when I was doing Wildland Fire, we all wore our yellows: green Nomex pants, yellow Nomex shirt, pack, hard hat, gloves. The only thing you could really personalize was your helmet, but everyone would put their own stickers on their helmet, or maybe they'd have a different pack that they purchase themselves instead of the one that was issued. But everyone's always looking for some way to get their own little personal touch in their outfit. I know I put a sticker on my helmet that's from like Hot Shot Brewing Company, as a coffee company. It says "Don't lose your fire." But yeah, like even if we have a uniform, we're looking for a way to make it personal, like make it ours, so that we do fit in with everyone, but we're just a little bit different.
Oh, completely agree. And I'm happy you interrupted me there, because I nearly forgot about like watches, jewelry. Fashion isn't just clothes, it's shoes and boots. I don't know about you, Nick, but no matter what gear I use, whether it be tools, clothes, my vehicle, I customize everything to function for me better, just to operate and handle better. Like if I have a hammer, I might cut it down to a length that I like a little bit more, just so it's a little bit more easier to use. Or when I get like a maul or something like that, I might put a couple pieces of tape somewhere, and I might, wood burn it a little bit just to write my name in it or something. Just a little customization. And whether it's something like that fashionable, or simply a watch or a belt buckle or a purse or jewelry, that little act of defiance of saying I'm an individual but still fitting in with the tribe. I can't agree with you more, Nick, that as much as we try to fit in, we still want to be different.
Yeah, both, especially like for Wildland Fire, people will fight over, oh, well, it's more efficient if your radio's here or there. But in college, you could always tell the Wildland firefighters in class because they had the G-Shock watches. I had one too, but it's like, yeah, all of you guys, we all have the same G-Shock watch. It's like, How do we do that? How do we get to this point where we're so much alike?
Well, that's probably societal pressure. But before we get into that, I want to mention one more thing about individualism. So, a small survey of about 1,000 males did it on tucking in your shirt. 60% of men who tuck in their shirts were happier in their jobs. 22 were more optimistic, and 19% had a higher income than those who didn't tuck in their shirts. And Nick, this says probably doesn't matter because you're married, but those who tuck in their shirts had an 8% increase in dating.
Yeah, I think that comes down to confidence. If you look good, you feel good, you're more confident, you feel happier, and if you're more confident, women are probably more willing to talk to you. You're more willing to talk to women. So it doesn't really surprise me that much. I think it's more about creating using your fashion to create confidence in yourself is what's going on there.
Oh, agreed. I This might be a bit of a stretch, but when your hair, I would count hair as a sense of fashion, is the right way, you just brush your teeth, you just, either clean shaved or trimmed up your beard, you got, fresh new soap so you smell good, you feel more empowered, more self-confident. And I imagine that's got to be huge on a masses level. If as much as this is vain, but if more people took care of their appearance, the more they might care on how other people might see them or might care less. I'm not quite sure which way that would go, but as vain as it sounds, you should maybe care a little bit about your fashion, which is really weird coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of what I came across too, especially with the exercise stuff. I was like, oh wow, that's really doesn't surprise me. And thinking about it after work when it's warmer out, and I don't know if it's just because it's warmer out, I would put on like exercise pants and a t-shirt, and I'd be more likely to run after work than now that it's cold out. I put on pajama pants, and I just don't as much. But I also exercise during the day, so I'm not just sitting on the couch all day. But I don't know if it's just it could be the temperature, or maybe it's just like wearing the pajama or wearing the running pants make me exercise more. But I do think like what you're saying that just have care like focusing a little bit more on fashion will help you. You'll appear more confident. And I know like for me personally, once if I'm not going out in the woods or something, I'll dress a little bit nicer and I'll put on my watch and my actual wedding ring instead of just not wearing it because I'm going to go do some physical work or something. I feel a little better about myself too.
Yes, I'm unfortunately the same way during these winter months where I'm like I just want to stay warm. I want to be underneath the covers. I don't. But when I wake up and I put on a nice pair of jeans and kind of a relaxed button up, still a Sunday button up, but still open shirt overlay, I'm much more productive. I get more work done. I feel like that's an aspect in every sense of fashion where I would imagine I didn't come across any psychology on it, but simply what type of shoe or footwear you're wearing would probably influence how you feel or what the activities you do for the day. If you just put on like some old pair of crappy gym shoes, you might, just run, do some chores, come back and sit on the couch. But if you put on,
That's a very dad gym shoes. You can do some housework, run some errands.
unfortunately we're getting older, Nick. But if you put on like, a nice pair of running shoes, you might want to get a little more bounce in your step. You might subconsciously want to go run more, work out more. Or if you go put on like a nice pair of boots, you might want to do physical work. Or you might want to put on dress shoes. You might feel more proud, more honorable, more like you rule the world, so to speak. And I imagine that has to tie in quite deeply with depression for individuals. Of when you're depressed, you kind of don't care what other people think, or you might not care what you wear, but simply changing your clothing might actually affect your mental state, which is something small but would help a great deal of people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's starting with something small that can have a huge impact.
I have no evidence for this, but I just want to throw this out there since we're talking about the individual. I would love to see a study done on a bunch of people where their entire wardrobe is removed and they are given a random wardrobe. How much their personality would change.
Yeah, I wonder. I didn't really look into this, but people are struggling with depression, and then they had someone who's helping them like get dressed and stuff, and all like nicer clothes. How that would affect their like mental health. I don't know. That would be interesting.
It would. And, dressing well isn't just suit and tie, it's being put together. There's entire equations on matching, which we'll probably get to later, but how you feel echoes to how other people treat you. Simply the way you dress, as much as we like it, we judge people. We look you up and down. We see, are you a possible mate? Are you a possible threat? Would we possibly be friends? Like, Nick, like you said, with someone laughing at your shirt, are we connected in some way? Are we in the same tribe? Are we in the same lane? That truly echoes throughout society and multiple different ways. If you're a gym clothes, but you're still looking out of shape, you're like, oh, you're trying. You're optimistic. You're a bright future. I might want to be your friend. And studies shown that if you dress quote unquote nicer, people assume you're smarter. And not only that, if you dress nicer, like suit and tie, the more traditional nicer, you get, I think, an 18% increase in salary. I think it's 12% chance of landing the job. It's either 12 or 22%. Dressing nicer is beneficial all around for not only your personal, but your life around you. How people treat you completely changes.
Yeah, and I came across one study that I think is in the same group of studies we already talked about, but they just showed a picture of a man in a suit, and one suit was like a fitted suit, and the other was just an off the rack suit, and no, blurred out the face. And they asked people to describe the two different men, or same man, different suit. You still couldn't see the face, and the difference between the fitted suit and non-fitted suit were pretty wild. Like everyone was saying that the fitted suit guy was, smarter, better looking, handsome, more confident than the other guy, even when in reality he was the same person. He just happened to have a better suit on.
Hey, cosmetics matter. And in my mind, since we talked about money a little bit in the early of the podcast, in my mind, this more science in the psychology of fashion might lead back to more well produced, well made clothing. I can hopefully see a trend of more tailors coming back to make high quality clothes that are actually well fitting for everyone, less generic, run of the mill clothing, which I'm more for. I'm more for more jobs and more skilled laborers and more niches, so to speak.
Well, I think we're already seeing that. I mean, growing up, a lot of people wore the standard Old Navy like t-shirts and stuff that their parents picked out, but now just because of I don't know the internet and all that, you're seeing a lot more tailored specific stuff. Like each industry almost has its own like clothing, little distinct brands. Like you got brands like Black Rifle Coffee, which is a veteran brand, and that people wear that, and everyone kind of you already know where they're at. And then the same like in Wildland Fire, like that Hot Shot Brewing Company I mentioned, they make T-shirts and coffee and stuff that is very brand specific to those things. And so everyone's wearing their own clothing now. There's all these other companies that just make clothing that's tailored to like blue collar kind of stuff, very smaller companies. And so our fashion is getting more and more personalized as time goes on. Now, maybe not like you're saying specifically tailored, like an actual tailored, but it seems to me that everyone's getting clothes more and more specifically suited to exactly what they want, just based on the availability of information and learning about these different companies. It's not like we're all going to Gap to buy t-shirts anymore.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. It's more niches, more good tribalism, which is quite weird saying. I also want to point out this fact. I imagine I can speak on my behalf. I believe I can speak on Nick's behalf, but the fashion we are mainly talking about is clothing. The fashion of what car you drive, what kind of house you get, that's a whole nother subject. So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're mainly just talking about clothing this episode.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I didn't want to get into all that's gonna be a whole nother episode.
No, but since you touched on it a little bit with the internet, it's amazing how quickly the fashion trends change and how much influence the people follow on social media, on the outlets, on how much that changes your view on fashion. So if you see someone you like, you want to dress like them a little bit, or relate to them, or you want to fit into that tribe, you dress like them. You have more influencers, social media influencers, having a lot larger effect on the clothing industry than ever before. I mean, in the past, like say the 1950s and 60s, you can see Marilyn Monroe buying a specific lipstick or Kennedy buying a specific suit brand. That would, obviously change it. But because there's so many people online currently and so many trends, how society changes and how society views certain people based on fashion is ever changing. It comes and goes constantly. It used to be long periods, about, from what I saw for the 20th century, about 8 years for fashion to truly change. And it seems like, to me, Nick, fashion's changing every 6 to 8 months now.
Oh yeah, I'm not that surprised. I mean, everything in our lives is seems like changing every 6 to 8 months, but um, yeah, no, I mean, everything's accelerated just because of the spread of information, and who knows what's coming up next. I have an interesting thought. So in fifth grade, there's this girl who wore a like tie and like a button-up shirt and like a I don't know whatever, I forgot what pants she was wearing, but which at the time I think like was high fashion, not something a fifth grader would understand. She kind of got made fun of, and people didn't really understand it. And not that I'm a high fashion would ever get that, but so I'm curious. So even though that is in that fashion, the audience that received it didn't get it. So do you think that would cancel out the confidence you would get from wearing something that's in fashion because the audience doesn't understand it?
I would say yes. I think you got to read the room. If everyone prefers something and you're trying to fit in a certain social structure of looking nice, because let's say fifth grade, I think having a new pair of Nikes in my mind was, oh, he's got the new Nikes. Those look awesome. Or
That's probably too old for light up sneakers at that point, right?
yeah, no, it was more like the '03, '04 Kobe's. I don't know if you're a sneakerhead, but like, oh shit, he's got Kobe's? Jesus, those are slick looking. Like stuff like that, or like this might be me, but going to high school, uh I wasn't exactly the richest kid. There was a lot of, I would say, rich kids in our high school, Nick. But when I saw kids wearing like North Face or, you know, brands similar to that, I would just think, oh, upper middle white class for these kids. Like I could completely identify their economic and structure for their household based on what clothes they're wearing.
Oh yeah, I remember when I got my first North Face, like in sophomore year. Or I got a Mountain Hardwear. It's kind of a similar brand. It wasn't a North Face, but it's like, oh yeah, now I'm one of the cool kids.
You know what? Something this is probably a little bit off topic, but with Carhartt, for me growing up, Carhartt was, oh, you do hard
Oh,
work.
this is perfect.
You do hard work. Carhartt is like, they're like, to me, Dickies. Like I have a lot of Dickie clothes because they work well for what I do. Like if I need black dress slacks, to be in the office, but I also need to go out to the wood shop or metal shop, weld something, I'm wearing Dickies because they're functional, nice looking pants. And I used to think the same thing about Carhartt, but now I feel like Carhartt, everyone's wearing ironically. Like you're not working a hard job. You're just wearing Carhartt simply for the logo, for the name.
Okay, so here's a Oregon story for you. So it was like Thanksgiving, and I was flying home after work. So I was leaving straight from work, and we were burning piles. So I kind of got like not super bad because I was trying to stay clean to travel, and I left from work and drove straight to the airport to make my flight. And I'm sitting on the when you're like walking through the plane to get to your seat and someone's putting their bag away, so you're just kind of standing there. And this guy is like, "Oh man, where'd you get those distressed Carhartts?" I was like, "This is only in Oregon would someone ask for distressed Carhartts."
That hurts my soul. like
It's like these are not working man pants anymore. Or that's so the pants that I was talking about earlier, my really expensive rain pants, they're a company called Filson, and it's like a cloth with wax in it that's rainproof, like really rainproof, and they're pretty nice, but they have a huge price tag because they're now very fashionable with like the hipster community who can afford to pay the higher price tag. And so they went from being this like working like Alaskan outfitter, like coastal outfitter, to like hipster-ish brand.
That sounds like the goose feather jackets that are now like super expensive, even though they're not that expensive to make. Like they're just simply a piece of fashion item that is popular in society and a structure of like, hey, I got this. Look at me. I'm peacocking.
Yeah, and that's the problem with Oregon is you have to try and how you look at people to figure out if you can get along with them. You have to figure out if the person is wearing the flannel ironically or not ironically. Now, a good indicator is how tight the pants are, but sometimes you can be wrong.
Yeah, I'm running the same issue in Texas. Everyone here wears boots. And when I was growing up, boots were, kind of people I got along with. They're like, oh, okay, you like working with your hands. I can get along with you. But now everyone wears boots. I'm like, I can't tell. It's 360 degrees combat of trying to figure out who's who.
So we diverged, and now we're all heading back towards the same thing.
Well, we brought it up a little bit on how society views us. I mean, mates trying to peacock, trying to attract the opposite sex is huge in the fashion world. I mean, huge. To look sexier, to look more confident, to simply get a mate to, for lack of better terms, quote unquote, bag the prize. Females wearing tight dresses, a bit of exposing to help show fertility. Males wearing explosive clothing, depending on their audience, and just to show, hey, I have money, I can do so and so, to show that ambiance of, hey, I'm such and such structure, I'm such and such status, I am in such and such world, to show the cover of a book of what they are. Now, granted, with clothes, it's a chameleon effect. You can easily change in those out of those. I imagine everyone has their going out clothes to, look nice or fashionable depending on the environment. If you're just going to a bar with a couple buddies, you might just wear, a pair of old sneaks and some jeans and a t-shirt. But if you're looking for a date and you go to more of a dancing bar or club, you might wear a button up. It's the fashion world and the dating world. They're tied in. You can't separate them. They are glued together.
Oh, for sure. And I'm really jealous of how many times you said peacocking this episode. Not gonna lie.
Why? I'm confused on why you're jealous about me saying peacocking.
Because it's such a funny word.
It is.
I don't know. That's all.
Oh no, but it's true. People put on makeup, jewelry. People gel their hair, get a certain haircut. I mean, living in Chicago, when I would go out, there's a lot of quote unquote douchebags that I was competing with when I was trying to, talk to a girl. And granted, I probably stuck out like a sore thumb because I don't dress like upper middle class white kids in Chicagoland. So I was probably an outlier there, and that's probably why it didn't work out for me. But the black shirt, some dark jeans, or they were wearing like a light blue shirt. God, the amount of douchebags wearing light blue shirts and like black slacks, I want to punch in the face. Like it screams to me daddy's money. Now that might just be societal and television just doing that to me in history, but boy, does fashion now tell me what kind of individual you are. Sorry, I went on a little tantrum there, Nick.
No, I mean it's just like the same thing out here. Depending on the kind of clothes and jeans someone's wearing and pants, you can infer how much money they have and stuff like that. Like we always made fun of this one kid in my fraternity who always wore like the sparkly pants, like with the conchos and stuff. We called them like barrel racer pants. The pants.
At least he wasn't wearing Crocs.
Did Austin wear Crocs? I really think he did.
Oh no!
Just like around the house, not like out. He's pretty surprisingly fashionable, but again, wrong audience in the fraternity. We weren't there for that, and he just never learned. But yeah, you can definitely tell, like mostly out, like not to get too far away from fashion, but hiking now is a huge trend. It's very fashionable to be hiking, and me and my wife, we go do all sorts of hikes. I mean, our honeymoon, we did a backcountry hike. So we're like pretty seasoned hikers. I mean, I hike for a living, But you can tell the people who are doing it just to like be fashionable, who went to REI and bought like $600 worth of gear to do like a 2.5 mile loop. It's like, come on, really?
If I might chime in here, Nick,
Yeah.
I would say your mating slash fashion world is much more difficult than mine because you have so many quote unquote hipsters. And in my mind, it's just nature extended into humanity where you have other birds mimicking other birds to fit in to steal mates. So you might have, I can't think of a bird off the top of my head. Well, I'm just going to go with a random bird. It's not this exact bird, but I'm just going to go with it. So you have like a quail, right? We'll say you're a quail, Nick, and you don't have pre-worn pants. You worn them out yourselves, like you should. And so when you're attracting mates, that's what you are. But then you might have hipsters who mimic that to try to steal mates away. I feel like that's very common in nature, and humans are just mimicking it. And I would imagine it's got to be frustrating for a high hipster area because you have lots of imitators, lots of synthetics, I guess to say, for clothing, for fashion to blend in. Because I don't know about I don't remember the study I came across, but I can't remember the percentage, but the amount of percentage people first thing they do is look at your shoes is extremely high. The amount of times people look at your like what kind of shoes or boots you're wearing is significant. So you should truly care about your footwork on how they look. Granted, work versus out in society about are two different things, so keep that in mind. But would you agree with my statement on mimicking other humanoids to steal mates?
Yeah, I think that's
That's not
definitely the mimicking thing. But I think it's also, first off, I want to see your use when you said high hipster area. I want to see that on like a census or like when you're entering county line, like welcome to Clackamas County. We honor veterans and first responders. And below that, it's like HHA for high hipster area. Uh,
I can just see some dive bar out in the middle of the nowhere, and it just has a circle with a cross going through it and saying no, no hipsters allowed.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's exact like the boils down to the stealing the mate thing. I think where it started from is like wearing that ironically, right? It's kind of like
Well, I
how
don't.
people and it just became part of the fashion. So like people were wearing flannels to make fun of other people, the same way a lot of people started saying bro to make fun of people who said bro, but now bro's kind of like we all say
Common.
bro. I mean, my wife says bro because we used to say it ironically to make fun of people, and now it's just like part of our everyday lexicon. Maybe just because we're trash humans, but I think I think I think that has kind of something to do with it. But I see where you're coming from, right? Because that's the fashionable what the women want, and you wear it ironically, and then but you still like blend in with those other crowds, so you're attracting like a wider audience.
Well, it's not to me just hipster. It extends to so you see a person you have a crush on, you have a mate that you want to date, and you see what type of mate they go for. So if it's a female going for a male who tends to wear, a button up, well fitted pants, dress shoes, you might dress like that because you want to attract a mate similar to her. And vice versa. You see on the television some celebrity and you see them married to such and such woman. So you might dress similar to her to help to maybe subconsciously try to attract a mate similar to that. With the hipsters, yeah, I agree with you. It started ironically, but I can see it being a feature that it kind of steals mates. I That might just be me overthinking things, but I can see humans mimic other couples trying to attract a similar mate to because of their clothing. Like if I let's see here, I like Tom Hardy. He's one of my favorite actors. Tom Hardy, he pretty much dresses relaxed, and that's what I tend to do. Boots, jeans, t-shirt, and sometimes a cool jacket. And I either consciously or subconsciously do that occasionally. And I don't know what his wife or girlfriend looks like, but if I kind of subconsciously, if you dress like them, you might think you are them. I guess at a point, I don't know on how many levels or degrees, but if you mimic people with success based on their fashion, you might try to get that success yourself. Is what my mindset is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But it is so weird on how much the fashion world changes countries, changes continents. It changes the entire planet itself. And Nick, if you don't mind, I'd like to transition into how fashion has such a negative impact on the planet.
Yeah, I am definitely down.
So, like we mentioned earlier, fashion is a dual edged sword. It is a tool in your toolbox, as Nick likes to say, but we are currently wielding it and we're a kid playing with a full sword. We are not sure what we're doing. The fashion industry wastes about 93 cubic meters of water just to grow the plants to make the textiles for fashion. That's a lot of water. And hell, fashion is responsible for 10% of the global carbon emissions. Granted, this happens in a lot of developing and third world countries because that's where sweat labor shops are, and et cetera, et cetera. And because of fashion alone, 500,000 tons of plastic microfibers are dumped into the ocean. And it doesn't stop there. Just in the US alone, 10.2 metric tons of textiles end up in landfills, and another 2.9 metric tons end up just being burned. Because fashion trends are changing so fast, people are getting rid of their clothes in like an exodus. It's ridiculous. And all that ends up in a landfill or ends up being burned, not recycled, which you should definitely go check out our episode on illegal recycling and backyard philosophy. But Nick, before I continue, just the impact fashion has on destroying the environment, what is your feelings and opinions on it?
Oh, I have pretty strong opinions on this. I mostly just because. All right, I'm gonna say a nice thing about hipsters so I can insult them in a minute. But so the one trend that they have of like thrift store shopping, which that may be more a credit to Macklemore than hipsters, but is of reducing clothes is good. But it is crazy to see how many of these hipsters, especially out in Oregon, who they buy clothes because of like whatever. Maybe it has like something that's green on the label, but it's very clearly like not a. They're like always buying new clothes and stuff. That their fashion choices are actually more harmful to the environment than they understand. But they do it in the name of like, oh well, it said like green or whatever on the label or something like that. It drives my wife insane. Just all the stupid things that they do. But like the biggest this isn't really a fashion thing, but so they'll like whatever company like Columbia or something, like one of those big kind of hipsterish companies that predominantly sells to that group of people.
Target audience.
Sure. Like a lot of their stuff that they do, like it doesn't make any sense, and then they do like they did this thing like we're gonna plant like 50,000 trees and for like the year, and it's like everything's green, so each tree or each clothing that's supported like does something to help pay for those trees. Well, the cost of actually planting 50,000 trees is not that much compared to how much they probably made from that. But it creates an excuse to, oh, I'm just going to go buy this like predominantly petroleum synthetic cloth, wear that on the guise of being green, and then I'm going to take this plastic non-reusable water bottle out into the woods. It's like I don't know how many times we've seen that out in Oregon. It drives me insane because a lot of these companies, like I said, I plant trees for a living, and out here, I don't know if you get those ads a lot, Mike, of planting a tree, and they have like stickers that say like this what cloth or this whatever helped plant a tree, and then they put it on their Subarus that they helped like plant a tree. We'll take a crew out and plant anywhere from 9 to 11,000 trees a day, just and we'll for our company. So that's like a week's worth of work for one crew. So it's like they're really not like in the grand scheme of things, not that much. And they make it seem like a lot because I mean, who really knows how many trees can be planted in a day or what the cost is?
Yeah, I imagine that's not very common knowledge. And to answer your question, Nick, that's not really common around me. I see more people burning coal in their trucks than I see environmental stickers. If that's any indication of my environment.
That's probably a good point. You also probably get a lot less Subaru in Columbia commercials than I do.
I don't think I've ever seen one here. But no, I agree with the the quote unquote selling more products simply because you're saying you're green, even though all evidence points otherwise. I mean, entire industries and organizations have started to help make agriculture more efficient for clothing, for fashion. So, a company called Better Cotton Initiative is an organization trying to help the global cotton production by trying to make it more sustainable, trying to make it less wasteful of water, because the amount of water wasted for growing clothing in not just in America, but Southeast Asia, in Europe, in Africa.
And I think we actually did a comparison between cotton and hemp in our hemp episode for water use.
We did. You should definitely go check that out on Backyard Philosophy. Nice call out there, Nick. But it's true. The amount of waste just to keep up with the fashion demands is ridiculous. And I'm very curious. I could not find a study on this, but I want to know the long-term effects of dyes on the planet. So you might have, like we mentioned, there's 10.2 metric tons of microplastic ending up in the ocean because of clothing. Well, that clothing is most likely dyed. It's not just its natural color. When it decays, how does that leak out into the environment? How does that affect the environment? Not only are clothes, are they biodegradable, but are the dyes that make up the clothes, the prints, the thermal pasted images on front of your t-shirts, how do they react when massive amounts of that are stacked up in landfill decay and all pulled together? That's, to me, a very interesting study, which I could not for the life of me find out.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be pretty hard to do, mostly because you'd have to have like only dyes in like a small landfill to study. And I don't know if that's the most concerning thing that's being thrown away. Probably batteries is the bigger concern. But yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Still, I'd be very curious because I don't know until researching this, I didn't know how much clothes were thrown away or simply just burned, not shredded, recycled to made, I don't know, like a horse blanket, or make some type like insulation, at least something. For those who don't know, like boxing bags, you have multiple different types of boxing bags, and some of them are just shredded cloths on the inside. I hope those are recycled materials, but I feel like there's a whole industry there that no one's capitalizing on, of reusing or repurposing discarded clothing, because I don't know the cycle of clothing that lasts at a secondhand store. How long will it stay on the racks until they toss into the garbage? All these numbers, like how many high brands don't allow their items to go to secondhand stores? They simply destroy them or recall them. I imagine there's got to be a high percentage of quote unquote high fashion clothing items that simply don't make it to secondhand stores, or they just simply destroy because to help keep the prices up of their fashionable items.
Yeah, I know it's like if you have too much supply, then there's not as much demand. So I'm sure there's some of that going on. I have seen there's one in Newport of the Goodwill, but it's like a Goodwill boutique and it's only high fashion stuff. I think I've never actually been inside, but that's what it looks like from the outside. So there is some. What's that?
We're out of our comfort with fashion, aren't we, Nick? We're kind of jumping into the water, not really knowing fashion that well. I would definitely say we are not too high fashionable people.
Wrangler's a fashion, and Carhartt is now high fashion. So check and mate.
I know just about like, hey, don't wear a black belt with brown shoes, or vice versa.
See, I don't know that, and that's why I am married.
Wait, what?
So, no, that's not why I'm married, but that's why I ask my wife things.
No, like you didn't know you don't mismatch your belt and shoes?
This isn't a podcast about what I may or may not know, Mike.
No, now it is. Your watch band, your belt, and your shoes are always supposed to match. If you wear brown shoes, you're supposed to have and a leather watch band. It's supposed to be brown, and your belt's also supposed to be brown.
Well, I'll give you a hint that is not the case.
God damn it.
So I have brown boots, brown belt, black watch.
Yeah, but you can get away with that. That's okay. Watch is less noticeable. But brown belt and brown shoes, I feel like that's 101 there, Nick.
But if you only have one belt, no matter what kind of shoe.
All right, Nick. Let me ask you a question. Would you be willing to pay 18% more on your clothing items if it would stop sweatshops? This is kind of a loaded question, but
I don't know. Like, I really only buy like I have mostly like most of my t-shirts and stuff are all probably sweatshop t-shirts that were made like for whatever event, like from some free thing from college, and then stuff that I ordered that's pretty much all made in the USA. But a lot like in a lot of my I'm sure my all of my like jeans and stuff are made in sweatshops. And so I guess the issue is like with everything, everything is so complex that when you go to the store, really the last thing on my mind is which of these brands are sweatshop free. And so the question, yeah, would I be willing to pay more? Yes. But do I think about that every time I go to buy pants? No, which is probably why there's still sweatshops because everyone I'm sure would say yes, but that's not what we're thinking when we go to buy pants.
much more complicated answer than I was looking for to my question. But if we simply raised all the clothing prices 18%, the amount of sweatshop labor would significantly improve. And that's a huge negative impact to me, my mind, for fashion. There are currently 250 million children between the ages of 5 and 14 working in sweatshops. That's 250 million too high in my mind. It's sweatshops. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I more than likely am probably wearing a sweatshop clothing item right now. It's so easy just to forget and you just go for the cheapest price. So I'm hoping that.
Yeah, and it's not just I mean it is clothes as well, but I'm sure I know iPhones are made in the US now, but for the longest time they weren't. Pretty much all of us have owned. So even if we did everything to avoid sweatshop clothes, we probably still own sweatshop phones and everything else as well. So I think we're all guilty of some way somehow owning sweatshop goods.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I'm hoping, because I feel like the textile industry, I guess, is more, in my mind, self conscious of their image, as ironic as that is, of they might be able to change the sweatshop item into a non sweatshop item. Like, I feel like they're the easiest to change versus technology. Does that make sense to you, how I explain that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's one of the other gripes with like, say, I can't remember if it's like Columbia, and I'm sorry I keep picking on them, but they just have the dumbest ads. Like they do, like you said, talk about how great they are for the environment, and then it'll be like made in Taiwan or something. So even if it's not a sweatshop, it's still shipped over on like a big boat that emits emissions. So it's like that's the other thing of, I guess actions versus speak. You know, do as I say, not as I do. I guess is what it is. You
Yeah.
know, the project an image of like green and nature and replanting trees, and then in reality, it's made in Asia with sweat in a sweatshop and then shipped over on a big boat. I guess is where the disconnect is, which is maybe that it's not anymore, and maybe Colombia is or isn't. I'm just using them as a punching bag, pretty much. But yeah, they do a lot, especially out west, and obviously it doesn't seem like as much in Texas. But a lot of these companies, North Face included, they're very green. It's part of their image now, and part of their who. It's a people who buy them want to project that image of being environmentally friendly, which is ironic because at the same time it seems like they're where they're made is not the greenest.
Yeah, I agree with that. But technology is entering the fashion world and might change how the fashion is not only created, but how fashion is produced. So, Nick, we're getting into my territory with STEM, with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Unless you have anything more to add into the negative impacts of the environment.
No, real quick, is it STEM or STEAM? Because I heard someone call it STEAM recently.
Whoever says STEAM is a moron. It is STEM.
Okay, that's what I thought,
I
but I
will
thought I'd
die
get a
on that
rise out of
hill.
you.
That is a non-smart, intelligent hill that I will die on.
All right, sounds good. That's all I wanted from you.
No, but it's amazing that Steam. Wow, you just made me do it. God damn. STEM is and has been in the fashion world and is entering the fashion world. Everything from silver nano whiskers sewn into clothes to make them antibacterial, clothes that sweat themselves clean the clothes, or they're simply sewn in with organic material that will clean their clothes. So goodbye laundry machines, and just the amount of new clothes coming out to make it less carbon emissions, clothes that can conform to your body. You put on like a huge shirt, hit a button, and it conforms to whatever you wear. It's a tailored shirt for everyone that you just hit a button and it automatically goes. And not alone, you got chemistry, that the amount of new materials needed, new colors being created. It's a fantastic new world for STEM majors.
Yep, I'm not surprised. I mean, that's the future, right? I mean, that's probably something that we've seen in like Back to the Future kind of stuff, like clothes that do all these kind of cool things.
Oh, that's the future. I have actually no idea on where clothes were going to go. But luckily, I might not have to, or either you, Nick, because we have AI now. And AI is making a huge splash in the fashion world. AI is getting involved in ways that is both economic and for design. So, a designer by the name of Dai Fujiwara collaborated with a mathematician by the name of William Thurston, and together they created an algorithm to create different types of clothes, new geometry, new fashion, just new ways to wear clothes. And it doesn't just stop with them. IBM's created a AI called Watson AI that analyzes thousands upon thousands of runway shows to generate and find patterns, then predict the color and trends of the fashion world. And in case you're wondering, Nick, the color of 2021 apparently is going to be aqua.
And that is a shade of blue?
Yep. There you
Yep,
go.
knew that.
There you go. What you know and don't know always surprises me.
Yes, well, that's my wife would be like, "Oh yeah, get the whatever," and it's like, shoot, it's some weird ass color. It's like, is it the purple one or the pink one? She's like, it's a mix of the two. It's like, oh, well, I
Lavender.
don't know that. So yeah, something like lavender. That's a perfect example.
Good to know that you can't tell colors, but yeah.
I know the primary colors:
What are the three primary colors, Nick?
red, green, blue.
Nope. Try that one more time.
Fuck.
You're close. Red and blue are
Red.
correct. What makes green? What two colors make green?
It's yellow and blue.
There you go.
There
There
you
you
go.
go. Those are the three primary colors. So, with AI now changing clothes, it's a whole new different game. I mean, I mentioned a little bit earlier about fashionableness, about matching. There's equations for it. There's one equation for matching clothes and it's fashionableness is equal to negative 0.5 m squared plus 0.62 m plus 0.49, where m is equal to the matching z-score. And there's a whole chart on the z-score. I did not know there was this much math in fashion. It's just quite surprising to me.
I would rather go dress like an idiot than have to do math to pick out what clothes I'm wearing. I'm sorry. That's not what I'm doing every morning to figure out what to wear.
If you want to do a runway show where you're a fashion designer and you're trying to, make not more than $90,000 a year, you want to get that new brand out, you might use like the golden ratio, you might use that fashionableness equation. You might try to develop something that is scientifically beautiful to the human eye, where it buys more, sells more, gets more clothes out there, helps, change the environment.
Yeah, I just imagine like some or some kid going to school for like fashion and having to take all these high-end math classes, being like, why the fuck do I need to take like algebra 3 for math? And apparently because there's math involved in fashion. Who knew?
Math makes the world go round. No, but not only just, designing clothes, but the clothes in tech. There are batteries being developed for clothes where your body temperature makes energy because of the clothes you're wearing that can wirelessly charge your phone. Not only that, if there's temperature changing clothes. So if it's hot out, it might be able to open up more, much like opening a window on your body. If it's cold more, it might shut down more. So it helps keep in your body temperature. And not even to mention safety clothes, Nick, steel-toe boots. I mean, that's fashion, just protection, right? Gloves. And if you want to go even more depth with the science of fashion, bulletproof vests, how it feels, how it moves, how it cuts into your underpits to when you're, lifting something. Just all those fashion things translating to other subjects that we might not even think about that are fashion.
Yeah. One thing, the technology of fashion that I came across I wanted to bring up is clothing that cools you. So it's clothing that takes away your heat. And what that means is that instead of trying to become more efficient with cooling everything, so like buildings in places where it's warm, all that air conditioning, you can not spend as much energy lowering the building because humans can now work comfortably in these areas with with clothing that cools them, so you're spending less money on to power everything, so there's less emissions. And I was like, man, that's whoever thought of that is a genius. Like instead of all these people sitting around, like how do we save money on cooling? And it's like, well, we could get more efficient air conditioners. Like what if we just made it so people were comfortable in warmer conditions? I would not have thought of that.
No, and it's quite ingenious. I do see some problems with that, like computers that need to be in kind of cold environments because they kind of heat up quite a bit. So I imagine it would be a certain niche that could only wear clothes that are self cooling or something like that. Like for me, like metalsmithing, blacksmithing, that seems like a perfect opportunity to do that, where you're next to a furnace or a foundry, and you want to keep yourself cool without having to supply more fans, which wastes electricity, or air conditioning for environment. Like that's a perfect, great solution. I'm very happy you came across that.
Yep. I came across, they're looking at that for firefighters too, because I don't know. This is an interesting fact that I learned a long time ago. So I don't know exactly where it's from, but I think the research was done at University of Illinois that after a structure firefighter goes into a building, like a flaming building, a structure, his body temperature is raised for the next like 3 days. Same as into a similar respect, wildland firefighters who are exposed to high heat near wildfires for a long time, their body temperature is also higher because their clothing is fire retardant, not cooling. So if you created some kind of fire retardant and cooling clothing for those guys, then they would be healthier. You're not heating up your body as much, not putting undue stress on it, and then can work more efficiently and safer. You don't have anyone passing out from the heat.
Yeah, that seems like an easy win, and I imagine probably with also sticking on that kind of theme with like doctors and nurses having more sterilized clothing, where it's not only fresh out of a bag to stay clean, but might have silver sewn into it to help disinfect anything they touch, or to simply help prevent the transition of diseases in hospitals and and doctors' offices, especially in poor countries where they can't afford to sterilize everything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But Nick, I have a few questions which I'm really hoping people will do studies on, which I'm not quite sure how they would do studies on, or I'm not to see evidence that studies have been done on them. Like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, the science and psychology of fashion is still kind of an untouched subject matter. There was not a lot of, I don't know about you, Nick. Were there? Did you come across a lot of psychology papers for fashion?
Not really. I don't think I really came across anything along those lines.
Well, some of them I have are I would say uh clicks. So like for especially kids of how fashion changes how they grow up or their outcome to be. So I imagine if they're in a quote unquote phase on how much influence that has on them, like the clothes they're wearing, like they're in the glock phase wearing all black owing to depression, will that lead to depression later on in life? Simply being in that mindset, wearing that clothes, living that quote unquote life, will that lead to it? And this might be way down the rabbit hole, which I don't really want to touch on, but I want to bring it up. But I'd be very curious on how we mentioned how if you look good, you feel good, but how that affects on a larger scale, like empowerment, like in the 1940s when women entered the workplace where they were no longer wearing the traditional clothing, they were wearing work clothing, or simply moving on even further where clothing wasn't just based on your status, it was just based on your opinion, based on your outlet, your art style. Or even moving on into probably dangerous waters, which is why I don't want to touch into it. How does the psychology of dressing as the opposite sex, quote unquote cross dressing, how does that affect a person mentally in the fashion world? And not only that, but like the stress of fashion for show models running down the walkway, how the pills they take, the starving themselves, that's all tied into fashion. There's a lot of untouched scientific questions in fashion, which is so strange to think about. I never thought fashion would be such a decisive thing in our society, but I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is completely fashion, but there's things that we as society put on people that create some division. For example, right now, I'd say the biggest thing that we as a society are using to judge people, not politically, but just as people, are two names that have a style, and I'm talking about Kyle's and Karen's. And
Yeah, just for my own entertainment, please describe the clothing of Kyle's and Karen.
okay, so Kyle's, you're looking at like some kind of Monster energy drink shirt, some kind of hat, most likely a flat brim, vapes, and kind of skaterish thing. And then for Karen's, that's think like the man like the John and what's her name, the John and Kate +8 lady haircut, like the very short kind of like fakeish blonde hair, big glasses, minivan, expensive purse. I want to talk to the manager, and
If I could,
that's your basic Karen, Mike.
if I could add on to
Yeah.
that, I want to add on Chad's.
Oh, Chad's another good one.
The pink salmon shorts with a polo with the collar up. Sorry, I didn't
Yep,
didn't mean to
that's
interrupt you there.
no. What's another good one? Oh man. Yeah. But yeah. And so that's I mean, we all know those people, and it is, or maybe we don't know them, but we've definitely seen them and been like, "Oh, that's a Kyle."
Yeah, you're not wrong. As much as we don't like to admit it, all humans judge based on appearance. But again, going back to what I mentioned with how clothing changes your empowerment, cross-dressing, sexuality, security, I would be curious on if a person wears a specific clothes, like again, like I mentioned that study where someone else chooses your clothes, like how much you would go into them, like how much you would fill those shoes, so to speak. Get it? uh,
Uh,
if we had another study like that, but instead of wearing random clothes of your sex, it's a random clothes of the opposite sex. I wonder how much a male would take on feminine traits and how much a feminine will take on male traits. That would also be very curious to me. Does a clothing Is a clothing an aspect of your inner wants, or can a clothing change your inner desires? Probably not the best wording for it, but it's the best I could do.
yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, I don't know about that, but I do just kind of from the birth order one of the third kids. So the third child. So each child is more likely to be gay. Each male child, successive male child, has a higher percentage chance of being homosexual, and that's partly due to societal pressures. Is of they think that because not being a male is pushed on them as much, but also because of kind of some antibodies that happen. So that might be kind of along the same lines, Mike, of societal pressures not pushed as much on the first two male children, that they have more freedom to kind of do whatever, so that they
If I can add
I
on
don't
to
know,
that,
it's not like
I
they were
imagine
less, yeah.
if I can add on to that, I'd imagine also the hand-me-down clothes. That's got to somehow affect a child's psychology of, oh, I'm getting my older brother's or sister's clothing. I'm not getting my own clothing.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I didn't come across anything like that, but I know my brother did not like wearing my old clothes.
And I also imagine, again, couldn't find a lot of research on this, but the color of your clothes on how that changes your personality impact and how you societally interact. Like if you're wearing all black or all red or all blue, because I know for fighting, the fighter wearing more red has a higher percentage of winning than wearing any other color. So I imagine subconsciously color has a huge impact on us, and wearing color on an everyday basis, on an average person, not just professional base, is also got to imagine. As much as it sounds like a BuzzFeed quiz, which is like, if you wear this in color, you're empowered. If you wear this color, you're relaxed and chill. As much as that sounds like healing crystals to me, there's got to be some merit of truth in it.
Yeah, and this is a topic that gets brought up a lot that I hear about. I actually didn't do a lot of research into it because I just didn't really think about it until now that we're talking about it. But women's clothing sizes, I think that has like a negative effect on people. But also, like, I don't buy my wife clothes because I don't understand women's clothing sizes. So that's just something that happens.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Nick. I know small, medium, and large, and I also know that changes depending on what country you go to. So I given up on sizes. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's my mindset.
Yeah. Do you got anything else?
No, I might sound like a broken record here, but it sounds like the fashion world is yet to be quite undiscovered for science. And I'm assuming we've missed something, and I really hope someone reaches out and tells us, like, hey, this is a really interesting topic, or these are these really cool scientific articles. And out of curiosity, Nick, where could they tell us or where to find all these information that they found?
You can find us on Instagram, and that's it.
And YouTube.
And YouTube.
But Can they find us on Twitter?
You cannot find us on Twitter because Twitter is a dumpster fire.
Every time. I love that. And out of curiosity, Nick, I imagine you're not reading a fashion book right now because you don't know how to match your shoes and your belt together. But what book are you reading right now?
I'm about to finish Tree Story, a book about tree ring dating, and might give it to you when I'm done. We'll see. What about you? What are you reading?
I am reading another Ayn Rand book, Fountainhead, and I imagine for the next few weeks, because it is a quite lengthy book, I will be reading this book for a while. But I quite enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, so I am very excited for Fountainhead.
Thanks for listening to the Backyard Philosophy Podcast. We rarely finish a podcast without missing a point we wanted to bring up, so let us know what we forgot. And if you have a topic you want us to talk about, let us know at backyardphilosophy